My name is Cem Sertoğlu. I'm a Turkish venture capital investor based in Istanbul. Most people, I think, told a relatively personal story, so I think mine is going to be one as well. And maybe parts of it, especially the first half of it, will be a bit of a rant on some of the aspects of our industry these days. I'm a Turkish citizen. I was born and raised in Istanbul, then left my country to go to the States, where I spent about 10 years, first in school, then as a professional. And then I started a company. My first company, it was a software business based in New York. And I built that, and that was my first introduction to the venture capital industry. I was a recipient of outside funding for my firm. And it was my first interaction with what I saw was a fascinating, almost a world that I didn't really think existed. And of course, this was coinciding with the first internet boom, so it was a euphoric time. And you were reading about venture capital in the papers, you were reading about success stories, etc. So in 2005, I sold my business and decided to return to my hometown in Istanbul. And I didn't really have any plans in terms of what I wanted to do. I had access to some capital because of my exit, and I started to make personal investments. So over the last 7 years or so, I was fortunate enough to make about 16 of these personal technology investments, mostly acting as a business angel, ranging from about $25,000 to about $500,000 per investment, and sometimes partnering with other institutions or other individual investors like myself to make these deals happen. As I was going through this process, in the last year or so, I decided to structure my activity into a fund model, where I became a much more structured, disciplined, and restricted venture capital investor. And that was when I started to realize the big difference between what true venture capital, when you receive it from a proper venture capital fund with outside investors and with return mandates that are delivered by those investors, and how dramatically different that was from receiving money from friends and family or angel investors or even some of the seed funds or accelerators. In my job, I meet about 500 entrepreneurs in an average year, and I make about 2 investments. So you see the very, very dramatic ratio of sort of meetings with an entrepreneur to actual investments. And every single one of my meetings starts with almost the same statement. I meet dreamers, the entrepreneurs. They are coming to me increasingly with big ideas, because that's what they're hearing from their mentors that they should come to us with. Everybody wants to change the world. And increasingly, these people, these entrepreneurs that we're meeting, are more and more qualified. When I first returned to Turkey in 2006, when you met a typical top graduate from a top engineering school in Turkey, starting a business was not on the top of their agenda. They were either thinking about academia, or they were thinking about joining a nice corporate, a bank, insurance company, in their engineering department, IT department. But that has been changing. Again, the glamorous stories, the movie, The Social Network, has shown people that if you go out there and build a business that a lot of people start to use, you can start hanging out with supermodels and befriend Justin Timberlake. So everybody has a dream. What we constantly then see ourselves as being perceived as are the people who supply these dreams with resources. We typically bring, of course, the capital, but sometimes the know-how, connections, networks, etc. I think in the presentation that Guy's talk, he was describing a perfect company for a venture capitalist to dream about investing in. So it would have been a fantastic match. What I do find is the lack of understanding that venture capital is actually an extreme solution, and it is truly appropriate for a very, very, very small fraction of businesses. Of course, an entrepreneur needs to finance their business. They need to be able to finance the growth, bring together the resources, the talent, the marketing expenditure, the product development budgets, etc. But for centuries, businesses have been built without this sort of magical touch called venture capital that we now have for the last few decades available to us. And the most obvious of that is profits. A lot of businesses are capable of generating healthy profits to be able to fund the growth that their company is facing the potential for. Secondly, you have banks. Of course, they're not the most understanding and are extremely demanding, but they're able to expand. Their job is to extend credit. So yes, sometimes you do have to mortgage your real estate, and sometimes you do have to, make sure you're staying within certain levels in your business. But banks are in the business of funding startups, and you have friends, family, people who trust you, who will take a leap of faith on your ability, on your talent, on your dream to support you. And then you have governments and research institutions, etc., that are providing grants and help for some of these businesses. And if you fail in all of these, you have angel investors, like one I used to be, who are interested with their passion, with their own capital. Their return expectations are perhaps more modest, and in a way, your startup is competing with the risk-free return of a bank account, which is not terribly attractive these days. So it's a lot of times a perfectly viable way to try to fund a business. When you start to go this path, you have to think, is my business appropriate for venture capital, knowing that many businesses have been built without a cent of venture capital. So what does it take to get venture capital when, and what are the ingredients for a company that's appropriate to receive venture capital? First of all, the hurdle for success is enormously high. You have to be going for a big opportunity. I think in our part of the world today, that is at a minimum measured in hundreds of millions of dollars. If the business doesn't really have the potential to reach that scale, I don't think that business is ready for or appropriate for receiving a venture capital funding because of the return expectations and the mathematics that exists in a venture capital fund. Secondly, and it's related to this first one, is you have to be willing to go at this opportunity in a very extreme binary manner, in that you are conceding that your business will either succeed in an extreme way or might fail in an extreme way. I mean, venture capital is quite an amplifier on both ends of the results spectrum. I mean, it can create enormous successes like the Googles and Fab.coms or Facebooks that we're talking about, or it can also create fabulous failures with a lot of pain and disappointment. Thirdly, you are conceding that your investor, your venture capitalist, is now a voice in your company and will be active, will demand to be heard, and will demand that their opinion counts, sometimes as strong as the founders and sometimes even stronger. And finally, the big exit question becomes one that is in the front and the center of the entrepreneur. The demand of a venture capital investor is to get to liquidity at the end of the day. So for the right business, venture capital can tremendously accelerate a business and increase the chances of success. But in the cases where the company itself is not a good candidate to receive venture capital in the first place, it then can lead to very dramatic disasters. So assuming you are going for venture capital in your company, you do think your company is right for the opportunity, where do you go? I'm talking to a Greek audience. Athens is not a major venture capital market. In fact, there are very few hubs of venture capital around the world, mostly in the US. The bad news is that VC is still a mostly local business. The good news that it's getting increasingly global, hence the title of my speech today, which is Venture Capital Beyond Borders. About 5% of all venture capital is now invested in across borders, and the recipients are fairly clustered. They're China, India, Israel, and Western Europe and Canada. And the suppliers of venture capital is also extremely clustered. It's US and Western Europe. Those are the sort of two big hubs of venture capital origin. If you decide that you are going for venture capital, what do you do to access VC firms? Again, not being in a big capital VC hub, the rules are pretty much the same for every company that's trying to access, which I consider the magic VC ingredients. The first one is the team. I'm sure you've heard this before, but going back to David's speech, his talk a few minutes ago, basically all VC teams are looking for very, very strong people that are driving the businesses. The second ingredient is the size of the opportunity. Like I mentioned earlier, it has to be big, 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 and you have to be going at it very aggressively. The third magic ingredient, at least for us, is some fair or unfair competitive advantage as you go towards this. We call it the right to win, but what is it that will make you guys win in this game that you're going after? And finally, the fourth ingredient is a sign of the three factors that I mentioned. Basically, can you show us the first three factors are in place in some visible fashion? Are there any traction signs that those three factors are in place? If those three are in place and we can see them, then it's a great opportunity. The good news for those who are coming outside venture capital hubs, entrepreneurs that are sort of outside and looking for international investment, I think one of the advantages is that there is this perception that smaller markets still have better valuations because of the concentration of high quality companies, and lots of venture capital in places like Silicon Valley tends to drive prices up. So I think there is the perception that if a Western firm is investing in Turkey, for example, that they expect to see lower prices. So I think there is quite a bit of attention being paid to the strong opportunities that are emerging out of some of the edge markets, I would say. My last part is going to be a bit of repetition. I do want to emphasize that I think venture capital is appropriate for a very small fraction of businesses, and basically you have to be willing to pay the price to basically jump on that enormously fast rocket that this venture capital investment will provide for you. It's basically pouring fuel on a fire and will make it explode. It can go both ways, but if you're willing to take that binary risk, I think with the combination of the right ingredients, venture capital will make dreams come true. So thank you very much, and please let me know if I can help with anybody's particular plans.